Greetings fellow Burkians, Dragon Riders, and Dragon enthusiasts. The live-action remake of How to Train Your Dragon will be hitting theaters very soon, and everyone seems to be very excited. Then, why does it feel like I'm the only one who's not? Quick video today because I'm on a bit of a deadline, and I hope you guys don't mind, but I will be cutting footage of video game dragons and dragon fights in here because I'd rather wrestle a Gronkle than deal with a copyright strike from Universal Pictures. And besides, footage of fighting dragons seems pretty on brand when talking about the first How to Train Your Dragon movie. How to Train Your Dragon is one of my favorite movies of all time, along with its sequel. These movies defined my young life, and I still hold them in high regard. But when it was announced that there would be a live-action remake of How to Train Your Dragon, my heart just sank. Over the last decade, we've seen a slew of live-action remakes, primarily from Disney, and they have a bad reputation of being radioactive trash. I thought to myself, oh boy, another live-action remake to violate my childhood memories. I didn't think much of it until I read an interview on Deadline with Dean DeBlois talking about How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World. At the end of the article, Dean is asked what he has planned for the future, and Dean mentions that he is excited to jump into different creative worlds and characters. Doesn't seem like it went that way for you, does it, Dean? But wait, there's more. A Cinema Blend article goes into how Dean DeBlois became associated with this new live-action remake. It turns out, Dean had been pitching those creative ideas for a while, but none of the studios were willing to take them on. Then, Universal came out of left field and offered Dean the opportunity to direct the live-action How to Train Your Dragon remake. With all this information in mind, my thoughts about this new live-action remake are certainly mixed. On the one hand, we are super fortunate to have Dean DeBlois returning to helm this movie. Dean was one of the people who helped make the original How to Train Your Dragon such a monumental success. With him directing, this movie has the potential to retain the heart of the original, which is something that most Disney live-action remakes completely fail at. Instead of giving this project to an uninspired hack, Universal decided to give it to someone who could give it the love it needs. But on the other, more cynical hand, do we really need this movie? We already have a How to Train Your Dragon movie. It's called How to Train Your Dragon. By making a live-action remake, it has to live up to the 15 years people have had to fall in love with the original classic. The filmmakers seem to be taking the safer route by copying every little detail from the original down to the jokes. But even then, the clips we've seen don't have the same energy, same color, same life as the animation. Why are we remaking this thing one-to-one? Of all the live-action remakes out there, How to Train Your Dragon is the only one I would encourage diverting from the original. For the 3 people watching who aren't aware, How to Train Your Dragon was first a book series written by Cressa Cowell, and they are wildly different from the movies. Dragons have their own language, which Hiccup can understand. Remember the terrible terror in the movie? That's what Toothless looked like in the book. The movies are worlds apart from the books, but they're so good. It was because of these departures from the source material that made How to Train Your Dragon so good. That's not to say the books are bad, they're really good. So what about the live-action remake? Animation and live-action filmmaking are 2 very different mediums, both with their own unique strengths and weaknesses. Since diverting from the original source material created such a classic, why not take full advantage of the live-action filmmaking to make a great movie? Maybe you could create a more gritty film that appeals to the adult audience that grew up with these movies. I've got a feeling that an R-rated adaptation isn't that outlandish, since in the original movie, they frequently talk about amputated limbs and dismembering dragons while they're still alive. Animated movies are so much fun that way. That terrible idea aside, why are we making this thing one-to-one? Let it evolve, let it change in meaningful ways, or maybe even just bring in some elements from the books, like the antagonist and weird creature from the second novel. Yeah, I lost my copy of the books and can't tell you the exact names. Sorry about that. But beyond just the nature of adaptations and intricacies of filmmaking, I have a bigger problem. The very nature and unending curse of live-action remakes. Remember that throwaway line from 3 minutes ago where I was talking about those interviews with Dean DeBlois? After The Hidden World came out, Dean was trying to get some new and original ideas off the ground and into creative fruition. After 4 years of pitching and writing, not a single one of those ideas made it into a production. It's why he was available to direct the live-action remake, because nothing else was going on in his life. Mind you, Dean DeBlois didn't just direct How to Train Your Dragon, he was also integral to the creation of Lilo and Stitch. The original one, not the live-action remake that just came out. I can't help but wonder what Dean could have made if he was just given the chance. But no, all these studios are too scared of original stories, and instead are leaning on the live-action remakes and milking the audience nostalgia. This issue isn't exclusive to Dean DeBlois, this is happening all over the industry. To me, the live-action remake is a plague that kills all creativity, preys on the nostalgia of the general public, and prevents new stories from seeing the light of day because audiences don't have the balls to support new stories. And now, Dean DeBlois is stuck making a live-action remake of a film he already said goodbye to because he isn't allowed to do anything creative. And I just hate that. This leaves my feelings about the How to Train Your Dragon remake in a tough spot. I could go watch it and experience one of my favorite movies for a second time, but by doing that, I further reinforce this curse of live-action remakes and further encourage studios to ignore new stories and creative movies. I'll be pissed if this movie makes bank, but I'll also be livid if it flops at the box office. In short, I'm not sure I want to watch this movie. Let me know in the comments if you will be watching How to Train Your Dragon in theaters. That's all I've got to today. I'll see you some other time. Now get out of here.